Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today as we discuss what's new in 2025 with the Antigua and Barbuda Citizenship by Investment Program. So it's a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining me from. My name is Chris Willis. I'm one of the managing partners of the Latitude Group, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Ms. Charmaine Donovan, the CEO of the Antigua and Barbuda Citizenship by Investment Unit, as well as Ambassador Jeffrey Hadeed, the chair of the Antigua and Barbuda Citizenship by Investment Unit. So the
Hello,
format
Jeff.
today is I'm going to work on giving an overview of the program for those who are new to this concept of citizenship by investment, to understand a little bit about who is Latitude, how do we assist people, private clients who are looking to have a second citizenship, and also then to look at the options in Antigua and Barbuda as it relates to their citizenship by investment program. Then we're going to have an open discussion with Charmaine and Jeff, and then we'll keep 20 minutes or so at the end for questions. You'll note that there's a Q&A tab on the bottom of your screen. I would ask if you could kindly type in your questions there, and then we can review those towards the end of the session. So who is the Latitude Group? We've been in business for over 11 years. We have 12 offices around the world, and our main focus is private client advisory. So we work with clients to understand their needs in terms of why they're looking at a second citizenship. And then once we understand those needs, we can advise which programs would be best suited. We're also very involved in a government advisory capacity. So this means we work with governments to advise them on their current programs, either bringing in refinements or in some cases creating programs from scratch. You'll see here, we're very well invested in the United States with 3 offices in New York, Miami, and Denver. So we do have a strong North American presence and continuing to grow. Our key board members, you have myself there, but also Eric Major, who's one of the pioneers of our industry, a 30-year plus veteran in this space, as well as John Green, who's based in Vancouver and manages a lot of operations for us in North America, and Ryan Darmanin, based in Malta, where we're also seeing a lot of interest from Americans who are looking at a European option to consider Malta as their program of choice. Very briefly, on the government advisory side, you'll see we've worked over the years with significant jurisdictions such as Canada, the United Kingdom, and Malta. And within the Caribbean, we've worked with the government of Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, and recently Anguilla and St. Lucia, where we're giving guidance on the management and positioning of those programs. So why is citizenship by investment becoming more relevant to high net worth and ultra high net worth families? As you can see here, when family offices in particular are looking at the structuring and planning for these families, the concept of citizenship and residency is becoming a mandatory phase of this now. And why is that? It's about planning and planning for different options. For those of you who are American passport holders only, you'll remember during COVID, there was a brief period of time when you had a travel ban. So what did that mean? It meant you weren't traveling. And so as an American who's used to just hopping on a plane and going somewhere, your wings were well and truly clipped, and you had to have another option. So many families said, look, we were exposed here, so we need to have another opportunity. So let's now start looking at a second citizenship just to cover that base in case such a scenario would happen again. So in terms of it becoming more and more of the conversation, we're seeing this becoming a necessary component of proper and thorough planning and structuring for wealthy families. And so why are people doing this? So we call it our smile. So starting with safety and security, many people feel that, if they have to go somewhere else because they're not satisfied with the state of play in their home country, they maybe want to have another jurisdiction where they can, where they can have some peace and quiet. And certainly the Caribbean ticks that box. For those of you who have visited Antigua and Barbuda, you'll know what a safe place it is, lovely climate. We know the catchphrase of 365 beaches, so you have one for every day of the year. So it's well and truly one of the best islands in the Eastern Caribbean. Mobility is not so much for Americans. It did come into play, as I mentioned, during this travel ban in the US, which obviously has corrected itself now. But if you're originally from a country that has a very weak passport, so you can maybe only travel to 50 or 60 countries, by becoming an economic citizen in Antigua and Barbuda, you're suddenly having access to nearly 160 countries. So, and this includes the Schengen area, Singapore, the UAE, places like that. So it really enhances your ability to get access to the world. From the investment side, we're seeing more Americans in particular who are looking to divest out of the US. So they're saying, well, instead of buying a condo, say in South Beach, maybe I'm going to go buy a villa in Antigua. And then as an extension of that investment, I can qualify for economic citizenship. So that's something that more and more people are looking at, is doing a combination of saying, I will purchase this property and I will get the benefit of citizenship, as long as, of course, it's in an approved project in Antigua. Lifestyle and health, I spoke about, the wonderful lifestyle you have in the Caribbean, with a warm climate, etc. And then education and employment, not so much as a primary driver from the US, but you'll see when we look at the options in Antigua and Barbuda that there is an element of incorporating education at the University of the West Indies if this was a program that you decided to work through. And briefly, for those, again, who are maybe new to the residence and citizenship by investment space, the four main propositions that we work with here at Latitude is residency by investment. So in the US context, this would be a green card. So this is when people have a residency card, typically with a pathway to citizenship, as long as you spend the necessary time to graduate to that next phase. For some people, they're happy just with a residence card, but more and more people like the certainty of citizenship because, of course, citizenship is for life. And that's something when, again, people are planning and they're looking at succession planning and future generations is very important to their overall planning and structure. The second is citizenship, and this is what we're talking about here today with Antigua and Barbuda, which is a direct pathway to citizenship. So the minimal residence time of 5 days within the first 5 years is easily achieved, once people make their first visit to the islands. And because it is a direct pathway to citizenship, it satisfies many people's needs of having an actual passport, which is obviously a byproduct of becoming a citizen. So that's becoming more and more popular. And as I mentioned, because citizenship is for life, it's something that people are much more comfortable having as opposed to just residency status. The next one is citizenship by descent. So we're seeing a large increase here where people have ancestral links to a European country. So, the most popular ones are certainly Italy, Ireland, and Poland, but we're seeing interest in many other jurisdictions as well. So we always try to examine and see, is there a link to a family member that could give you a pathway to qualify for citizenship in Europe. The final one is citizenship by merit, which is mainly for Austria, which is the top end of the program, if you like, in terms of cost and time. But that's for a very, very niche client who would be looking to go through that program in Austria. So let's get back to our main focus today, which is Antigua and Barbuda. So the citizenship by investment program here has 4 different components, and the 2 most popular would be under the National Development Fund or the NDF. And it's relatively simple concept for, starting at 230,000 United States dollars is the donation or contribution that you would make to the government. And as a byproduct of that, then you go through all of the internal processing, due diligence checks, source of wealth, source of funds checks, etc. And then you can be granted your certificate of registration and then finally your passport to Antigua and Barbuda. So, but of course, it is a donation, so this is non-recoverable. This is your cost to invest in the program. The second option here is real estate, and we're finding this is becoming more popular because there's more product becoming available in Antigua and Barbuda, and you would have to make a property purchase, and you have to hold that for at least 5 years. So there are we always say when you're looking at real estate, make sure that you're happy with the developer, you're happy with the conditions. Some of them are a share purchase, others are title deed real estate, and they've all got slightly different structures. So it is important that we properly explore and see what's the best fit, whether it's doing the donation or the real estate. As you'll see at the bottom, I referenced the 5 days and 5 years. Important to clarify that's 5 full days, so it doesn't include a travel day. So typically you would do a 7-day trip. So day 1 and day 7 are your travel days, and that you've got those 5 days to meet the requirements. And once you've done that and you've completed your oath of allegiance, then all the criteria are met. Of course, in terms of family unit, this is very important to note that it's not just the immediate family in terms of spouse and children, but you can bring in parents, grandparents, and unmarried siblings. So the citizenship unit in Antigua and Barbuda has been very welcoming in terms of expanding their definition of the family unit to be able to incorporate as many people as possible. Processing times, we'll talk a little bit about this with Charmaine, but you're looking around 6 to 9 months, for the unit to do their job and issue an approval. The other two you have here, the University of the West Indies Fund, where is very cost effective if you have a large family, so for 6 or more. And, in this case, part of the benefit is a year's tuition at the University of West Indies for one of the dependents. So this is becoming, for larger families, this is quite an attractive way to do it. But, not everybody has a family of 6 or more. So it is very niche from that perspective. And the business route is there as well. Again, the NDF and the real estate have always been the two most popular in terms of choices for applicants. Okay, so that's enough from me. That's your quick overview of what's happening in Antigua and Barbuda in terms of the program. What I want to do now is bring in Charmaine and Jeff, and we're going to talk more about what's happening at the unit, what's happening in the region, and what clients can expect from investing in Antigua and Barbuda and ultimately becoming citizens of this double island country. So, Jeff and Charmaine, are you both with me? You can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, wonderful. So let's open this up here. So welcome to you both. Always a delight to see you and to have some conversations about different options and what's happening. Let's look, first of all, Antigua and Barbuda is one of 5 in the Eastern Caribbean that offers a citizenship by investment program. The prices are comparable, let's say, amongst all 5, but how would you say Antigua and Barbuda differentiates itself from the other 4 islands in the Eastern Caribbean?
Okay, I think I'm going to take that question from you, Chris. Basically, I think the starting point for us is the stability and integrity of our program. We have been a very stable program. Our policies, our operating policies, all of our rules and methodology has remained fairly stable and consistent throughout. We obviously recently had the price change, and that is being motivated at a more expanded level. So we had to follow on with the MOA that all the governments signed, and more you're going to see all the programs become a little bit more harmonious in terms of offering and whatnot. In terms of what benefits or what USP we might have for, say, an American investor in terms of our program, apart from that stability, I would say the massive the proximity and connectivity that we have with the US. We have daily flights from Miami, New York, now Charlotte. We have flights from Newark. We have flights from, I think, Atlanta as well. So we have several primarily US East Coast cities that have direct flights to Antigua. Almost the same time zone, so it's not shaking you up or anything. And I think we also have for Europe, we have daily flights to London. We now fly once a week to Frankfurt. And so we are connected, very connected to both sides of the pond. So if you're interested in mobility and access, we're certainly way ahead of our competitors in the region. Apart from that, we also have a much more advanced level of development, with the existing infrastructure, the existing, basically the standards of living, things like internet, roads. From a more soft side, we have a lot, we're quite well developed in terms of services, conveniences, hotels, restaurants, quality of life, social life, lifestyle, all the things that someone would want, if they're going to be on an island at the same time, healthcare services notwithstanding. So I think Antigua, we're just a little bit more developed, fortunately or unfortunately, than our competitor islands. So that would make us a lot more attractive in terms of just the basic access and sort of lifestyle. From a business standpoint, we have a very sophisticated economy, sort of well-developed economy. So all the types of, investment opportunities that would exist somewhere else could exist here as well. And we do have, a government that fosters business development, that fosters investment, foreign direct investment opportunities. And then from the real estate side, our real estate market is quite vibrant. We've been seeing the likes of Sotheby's, Savills, Chesterton's, and some of the sort of global brands in real estate, in the real estate marketplace moving into Antigua. They didn't move here just because they wanted to. They moved here because they saw something happening. These people, these companies, they would do deep market research to understand what's happening in the real estate market. So I believe that, if we put all of that together, we are very ideal for sort of a U.S. Potential U.S. client or anyone from an already developed country as well. Again, we also have no tax on worldwide income. We have no personal income tax for employed people, and we have a relatively normal corporate income tax for businesses, which is only 25%. So, when you roll all of that into a picture, I think, we're very well positioned to be a prime choice.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jeff. I couldn't agree with you more. And, having spent a lot of time in the Eastern Caribbean and some of the different islands, the points that you raise are very valid. Certainly, airlift is a big one, with Antigua being, one of the primary hubs in the Eastern Caribbean for flights, not only from North America, but from Europe. And, the island hopping can take a lot longer if you have to go to another island, but you usually start either in Antigua or Barbados, right, is where you're going to start when you hit the region. So it's that's very, very important for those of us who are traveling frequently. But also, I think there's an element for people who are able to work remotely now, and we've seen that, over the last few years, that, you don't have to be, in your office in Manhattan. You could be, sitting in Jolly Harbor, your laptop and enjoying, the benefits of living in Antigua, but still being able to conduct some business, and so it's finding that nice hybrid. Charmaine, did you want to add anything further to Jeff? He was very comprehensive, I must say, with his reply, so he didn't give you much scope afterward. But
Definitely was very comprehensive, and I think that he hit all of our all the benefits of choosing Antigua and Barbuda.
And tell me, since the price change, and Jeff, you mentioned this, and just for our audience, that we'll talk about the memorandum of understanding that came with the United States and some of the agreements that were made. One of those was increasing the minimum price for the donation. Has that price change impacted the volumes that you're seeing coming in under the NDF?
Yeah, I would say at this point, yes, but I think it's still early days. There's some, there's an adoption period psychologically to the new price. And as well, what we did, and I think what every island saw, was an influx pre the price change. And so a lot of people would have advanced their decision to go through with an application prior to benefit from sort of the cheaper threshold, the lower threshold prior to the change. So it's still early days. We all felt it would take about 6 months for, you know, the mental, you know, sort of reset to take place, and also all the sort of pre-adopters who rushed through, they would have taken that decision over a longer period of time, and they rushed, and so we would have seen some of that market, you know, coming July 1st. So it's still early days to say.
Okay, no, we see the same as a practitioner in the industry. We've noticed a bit of a slowdown as well, and I agree with you. I think that 6 month timeline is about right for the industry to sort of readjust as well. But speaking of the industry, sorry,
if I could add,
yes,
we say amongst ourselves that this is the quarter to really determine what the real effect of the price change will have on the market. I agree with all of the points that the ambassador made before. And when we're looking at our numbers for January, it is more akin to what we have been expecting or experiencing prior to the change in the threshold. So it is really a great time to watch this quarter and determine the trajectory thereafter.
Okay. No, well, I'll keep in touch with you on that to see if that continues to be the case. And from what you're seeing, are you seeing a higher percentage of Americans applying compared to, say, 12 months ago?
But generally, actually, for the last 2 years, we've been seeing a significant increase in interest from American applicants. There isn't any significant difference in what we're seeing for January so far, but we're definitely watching this space to see what develops.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, and I mean, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we've seen a surge of interest from the United States, not just in the Caribbean, but you know, Malta in particular has been a very, very popular program when people are looking at getting status elsewhere. One of the things, certainly in the United States, there's a lot of people in the crypto space that are interested in these programs. What's the position of Antigua and Barbuda as it relates to cryptocurrency, you know, eventually becoming a way to make investments, or at least in terms of source of wealth, crypto wallets being a valid source, etc. Can you give a sense of how you see the evolution of crypto and how that may become a valid way to contribute into Antigua and Barbuda in the future?
Well, Antigua and Barbuda has previously demonstrated the willingness to accept applications from persons who are in the crypto space. You'll recall some years ago that there was a legislative change relating to that. At this time, though, we do not have the framework to actually receive the cryptocurrency, but we have been consistently processing applications where persons' source of wealth are from the crypto environment. And we have developed ways in order to do the proper background checks, due diligence on these persons and their source of wealth. There's specific requests that we make for persons who have the majority of their wealth in cryptocurrency. The challenge is, though, because we're not able to accept cryptocurrency, they still need to make the investment in fiat currency.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that we're not able to process such an application. Like I said, we have specific documents that we need from the applicant to be able to conduct the due diligence on their wealth.
Okay, wonderful. And thanks for clarifying, because we do get that question quite a lot, you know, where people, you know, because obviously more and more people are involved in this space and have generated some wealth, and they're saying, can I use my Bitcoin or can I use my crypto for the investment? So, you know, and perhaps that will change in the future. I've always said the first island that comes out and says we can accept will lead the charge, I think, and will reap the benefits. And perhaps that'll be Antigua and Barbuda, perhaps not. We'll wait and see. But you know, I think it's one of those that eventually it'll become a reality. And so I'm glad that you're sort of at the forefront of it and being very flexible as it relates to understanding that profile of client, because you know, the world certainly changed, you know, from that side of things as well. But Obviously, we understand the importance of maintaining your relationships with the correspondent banks and dealing with US, so you need to make sure that you keep that as tight as possible. So no, fully understood. And then in terms of you touched on the due diligence there, Charmaine. Can you give an overview again to our audience who might be new to the concept of CBI, citizenship by investment, the due diligence process that a client would undergo when they make an application into the unit?
Okay, so I'll give you the public version because the internal version is top secret. Well, I think the industry is aware that Antigua and Barbuda is a standard bearer as it relates to due diligence and vetting of applications. We have a team of experts in-house. They are all ACAM certified, that is Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialists. So they do their own checks. We engage third-party contractors who provide due diligence to international governments, Fortune 500 companies, and the like. And these contractors usually have boots on the ground wherever the applicant is affiliated with, whichever jurisdiction. So even if someone is born in one jurisdiction but has been living in, let's say, 5, or even if they're not living in 5 different jurisdictions, they have business affiliations in several territories. We have the contractors with boots on the ground in all of these jurisdictions to be able to provide us with the information to be able to assess the application. We also get information from the International Intelligence Network. So that would be classified information that the due diligence providers would not necessarily be readily be able to share with us. And so from all of these sources of information, we look at all of the results of the checks and then determine whether we need additional information from the applicant because perhaps the first submission was not as complete as we would like it to be, or whether the applicant is eligible. We prefer when the applicant is eligible though. We don't like to reject, but of course, as gatekeepers of the country, we need to ensure that we're doing our jobs well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's key as we talk, Jeff spoke about earlier about the integrity of the program. And so that's key to maintain your position as the leader in this space, just because it's when others are looking at the programs and the integrity and that making sure nobody gets through who shouldn't get through, clients need to understand there will be a degree of vetting that they're maybe not used to, and as you mentioned with the JRCC having access to governmental information, Interpol, Europol, and all the watch lists and such. It is citizenship at the end of the day, right? So it's not like you're going to buy a new car, and they're just going to check out you can pay for it. This is a much bigger proposition, and clients need to be ready for that as part of the vetting. Now,
one of the most recent additions to the vetting process is interviews. So now every applicant is required to take part in an interview that is facilitated by our third-party contractors, and mainly because, of course, we're getting applications from all over the globe, so our third-party contractors have businesses in different time zones to be able to facilitate and make it more convenient for our applicants. And what we've found is that the interview process has somewhat simplified what we do internally, because people now understand some of the questions that are being asked, some of the information that we need to extract. And so they will volunteer to provide additional documentation wherever they see from the interview that something that they would have shared in their application was unclear. And so that helps us with efficiency as well. Because whereas in the past, we would have to write to request the information, wait for it to be submitted, get due diligence to vet it again, and then come back with a decision, we're seeing now that people are more readily providing additional information just to ensure that we fully understand what's happening on their application and to help us to get to a decision a lot quicker.
Yeah, and again, it's these enhancements which continue to support the integrity, as we discussed, not just in Antigua and Barbuda, but again across all five, as a byproduct of the memorandum of understanding that we'll talk about in a bit. But the interview as an added component, how has that impacted processing timelines in terms of if we look at a file that doesn't have any delay for cause or any issues, if you were receiving a file today. What would you anticipate being the processing timeline until such time as, let's say, the COR is issued and the passports have been granted?
Well, it depends on a number of factors. Firstly, let me say that the interview process was new, not only for Antigua and Barbuda or the other programs in the region, but it was also new to our due diligence providers. So they had to develop the skill set, develop the team to be able to facilitate those interviews, develop the structure and the process. And we've had some teething challenges over the last 12 months. And I have to say that they're getting better. We're getting better at scheduling. We're getting better at hitting it on the mark with the interviews and getting them done in a timely manner. It's difficult to tell you about a particular application because every application brings its own level of risk. And whereas when we look at it initially, it may look like a plain vanilla application. Once we start to get into the weeds of the investigative process of the due diligence, we unearth a number of matters that need to be further investigated. What I could say to you in terms of adding the interview on, it takes about 2 weeks to schedule the interview because in our process, we give the clients at least 3 date options, which is most convenient for them. So having that concretized is totally dependent on how quickly they respond to us and the availability of the time with the due diligence provider, dependent on the time the applicant comes back to us. Now that we are in the midst of managing the influx of applications that came in last year, I know that the processing times have been extended, as you rightly shared in the beginning, 6 to 9 months is what we're seeing. I cannot say to you that the interview is adding any significant time to the processing of the application. It's just that I think once people become a little more familiar with this as being part of the process, they'll be more receptive and more responsive so that we can solidify the dates a lot faster for the interviews.
Okay, wonderful. And I think it's important too. I mean, there's a responsibility on practitioners such as us as well, is to advise clients this is what you should anticipate as a processing time, because I'm sure, we've all heard the stories of people saying, oh, it's going to take this long and it takes longer, and then people are unhappy, right? So we want to make, there's that responsibility for us to make sure that clients are properly guided in what their sort of realistic to pessimistic processing times might be for making an application.
It's really important because even though the average processing time for the unit may be a particular time frame, it's important for the client to understand that their application is unique and the time could be shorter or the time could be longer, depending on what the investigations reveal. Perfect.
That's very clear, and thank you for that. I want to just keep enough time for questions here because I'm enjoying our conversation. I spoke earlier about real estate being becoming more popular as the investment vehicle to qualify for economic citizenship. Can you give a brief overview how the unit would vet a real estate development to become an approved development for the purposes of CBI?
Okay. So there are a number of documents that are required to be submitted. There's an application process as well for real estate development, and it clearly outlines what are the documents that are required. So the unit does the first level of review, ensuring that all of the documents that are needed, performance statements, the development, the master plan of the development, the approvals from our developmental control agency, the environmental impact study, those are just a few of the documents that are required. And then we have our expert on team who would look at all of this information and then make a recommendation to the Cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda. And once the Cabinet approves, then that particular real estate project becomes an approved development project to be included under the offerings of the program.
Okay, wonderful. And I know, Jeff, you spoke about a lot of brand operators are, and real estate companies are establishing themselves in Antigua and Barbuda. And I know certainly Hodges Bay recently announced, their partnership with Wyndham, and that's another great endorsement for the island, where significant brands and real estate investors are, putting their stamp, if you like, and support behind some of these developments. And obviously these resort developments are key in terms of, I guess room keys on the island to enhance tourism. Do you see the concept of private homes eventually becoming a viable option under the real estate? If someone says, look, I don't want to buy into a hotel development, but I found this lovely villa that I would like to use as my qualifying investment. We see this in another island. Do you think something like that is something that Antigua and Barbuda would entertain in the future?
So I think we have some zones of some areas of the island that have been zoned, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe what happens is where it's like a freestanding property, sometimes that application can be submitted for approval on its own merits, and that would be evaluated internally, similarly within the unit by the same sort of core team that evaluates a project development. It's not, we also have in Antigua some larger gated communities that fall under, approved projects where they're not selling, say, rooms or condos in like a multi-use type property, but they're actually selling villas and or properties for development. We have some rules around how those can be approved or accessed, because we also want to ensure that the investment gets made. So we have developed some mechanisms to allow where a property being bought as just pure land and to be developed with a villa, we have some mechanisms that we use to ensure that the development gets done and that the villa gets built, because ultimately, the whole concept of the program is to draw in foreign direct investment, to bring in development investment, which subsequently filters to jobs, to economic activity, rental cars, car purchases, supermarket purchases, restaurant purchases. So the idea is that we don't want people to just have a piece of land and become a citizen. We want to see the villa developed. It can become part of a villa rental stock, which we see a huge increase in Antigua as well. So there's a lot more, with the likes of Airbnb and Booking.com, there's a lot more of, individual rental properties, accessing the marketplace as opposed to, say, just a traditional hotel. So it is doable. Where it's an outlier, there may be a special application that has to be submitted, and it could be granted on its own on its own merits.
So it's a case by case. If somebody says, here's what I've identified, I would like to, and normally the investment threshold would be higher, and those are things that perhaps we could look at. But that's something that just for the sake of the audience, that we would look at that on a case by case.
Yeah, it's not something that's absolutely it's we can look at it. We can see how it obviously not just going and buying a small house in the village or in one of the local communities, but it might be something where it's in a zoned area that's either coastal or can then turn out to be a rental property, or in and of itself become an operating business. So that's more the idea.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And again, I'm just conscious of time here. I wanted to talk about the MOU, and again, just for the the benefit of the audience. So this was the memorandum of understanding between the United States and the 5 Eastern Caribbean programs that operate citizenship by investment programs, where certain agreements were made, and we talked about price, we talked about, adding interviews and several other things. I guess my first question here is, since the change of administration in the United States, has that impacted the relationship or the direction of these discussions, or is it status quo for the moment?
If I might just jump in here, I think it's a little too soon to determine how that will take off. But I just wanted to make a small correction. It's the memorandum of agreement, not
Okay.
understanding. We had a meeting recently, all 5 of the countries, along with the UK government. And in attendance at that meeting, we had quite a number of US officials from Treasury and from the Visa Department and so on, as well as the EU. So I could see that there's still strong interest in maintaining the relationship. And even though there's an administrative change, a change of administration in the US, I'd like to say that it was on that administration that these talks started happening. I remember the US Treasury initiating talks with all of the programs while Trump was president the last time around. So I cannot see that there'll be a stark difference in the relationship. I think the international governments are aware of how critical these revenues are to the sustainability of the economies for the countries that offer these programs. And I don't think that there's a knee-jerk reaction at all to try to end these programs. The talks that we've been having have been very encouraging, and they're more in line of how can we strengthen these programs. We know that there are inherent risks associated with running such programs, ensuring that we consistently identify the risks, because of course, the risks are evolving, they change. This is an evolving industry. So it's an opportunity to pay attention to the risks and ensure that we implement the requisite mitigating measures.
No, that's very clear. Thank you, Charmaine. And before I get into the questions that are coming in here, can you elaborate on any things we can look forward to in 2025 for the CBI program in Antigua and Barbuda?
I'll let the chairman handle that question.
Again, I go back to the fundamental philosophy behind our program is really about stability, consistency. And we don't, we recognize that we operate in a marketplace, and the marketplace does not like, doubt, fear, inconsistency. Markets operate with a certain level of consistency. So we try to stay as consistent as possible. Usually, I like to say, and we try our best, that if we're going to make a change, we usually give 60 to 90 days, notice, so that the market can adjust, people can understand. We try to provide all the sort of framework for whatever changes to come. In terms of changes, I don't think you're going to see anything in terms of investment thresholds or investment policies in terms of what the core, the core qualifiers are to meet. For a successful application. What we are doing is we will probably be going live within the next 6 weeks or so with our digital platform, which I think will really provide an enhanced experience and an enhanced processing, experience in terms of submitting applications, reviewing applications, communication, both communications in and out of the unit. And I think that's going to be one of our most significant changes that you will see. So it's more from an operational level. We continue to promote and support as a board and from within a customer support attitude. We're really big about enhancing our communication, our relationship with our partners like yourselves and the local authorized reps, authorized agents. So those are the things we're focusing on. And then obviously we have CIS 25, which we're going to be the host country for. And it's going to be a huge opportunity for Antigua and our agents and our international marketing agents and partners to really showcase the island, showcase what we do, and for everybody to have a great networking opportunity. So I think that's going to be a big, probably one of the biggest events for the year, and so I think, from the program operationally, we just want to try and stay as stable as possible. And like I said, the digital platform will be a huge enhancement to every aspect of the application processing.
Did you see that the digital platform will reduce processing times? Is that part of the intent?
I think it will, certainly. It will reduce times. It will also reduce glitches and hiccups in terms of, the way processing gets done and the way applications get submitted, because most of the application submission now will be digitally online. So it won't be handwritten forms. We are also moving to digital signatures. So we'll be able to, with a DocuSign, you'll be able to have the document signed as well. So, it's going to be just a much smoother process all in.
And if I could add, the agents will be better able to follow the application through the unit so that they know what stage the application is at and be better able to manage the expectation of the applicants. And I think that would be the big thing for agents, because right now that's what they've been asking for.
Yeah.
So
well, it's always great.
Have a bit of tracking on what each stage of the application.
Yeah. Well, it's testament to you as a unit that if agents are asking and you're delivering, that's all we can request, right? So delighted to hear that. And as it relates to the investment summit in Antigua in April, that'll be, I guess, released in a few weeks. I think you said more information about that for people who want to register.
Yes,
very imminently. Yeah, I think maybe by the end of the following week coming.
Okay.
The website is up and running though. It's www.cis25.com. So persons can already access and get as much information as possible. I believe they can start to register as well. So as the chairman says, it's going to be great.
Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing you there for sure. And I just want to, in respect to our audience here, to go through some of the questions and thank you for this discussion so far. One question as it relates to, if somebody becomes a citizen of Antigua and Barbuda through the Citizenship by Investment program, what's the process for passing that down to future generations? And, what type of fees would be associated with that is one of our questions.
Okay. Obtaining citizenship through this program is obtaining citizenship by registration. And the way our laws are written, citizenship by registration cannot be passed on to dependents. However, the program has been able to accommodate the addition of dependents. As you laid out with your initial presentation, we have the most expansive definition of dependents, and it spans 5 generations. So even if you're a single applicant and you have been approved as a single applicant, later on you can add your parents, your spouse, your children, the spouses of your children, the children of your children, and your siblings. So whereas you're not able to pass it on by descent, you're able to add to your application. And currently, if you want to add a baby to the application, it's 10,000, and I think it's 50,000 for an adult. Yes.
Okay, but in terms of, as you said, so once that baby is added, can that baby then in future generations apply, be eligible for citizenship by descent because their parent or their grandparent was granted citizenship through the CBI?
So the CBI does not offer citizenship by descent. So you can only add to the application and only the principal applicant, or most recently, we've allowed the principal applicant to designate an alternate should something happen to the principal applicant.
But in terms of, let's say I became an economic citizen today,
Yeah.
and then I have a kid next year, that child I could add to the application. But if for their
Yes.
children in the future, that doesn't pass on. It's just sort of for the
That's correct.
immediate. That's okay. I just wanted to get that clarification.
We have a
Um,
uniqueness in our constitution, so this is built into our constitution, so we don't really even have the ability to legislatively change that. It would mean going to a referendum
okay.
to change the constitution. It's not,
Two-thirds majority.
and that would need a 2/3 majority. So
Okay.
it would be quite a complex and difficult thing to do. And I'm not sure that there's also the desire or will to really get involved in that. So unfortunately, Antigua has a constitution that designates two types of citizens.
Okay.
A registered citizen or a natural born or natural a citizen who is born of natural parents.
Yes. Yeah. Natural person. Yeah. No. Perfect. That's clear. Another question.
The way to fix your situation, Chris, is if that child comes to Antigua to have their child,
Yes.
then that child can actually start passing down the citizenship by descent.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's, we do get this question, and because we have quite an evolved citizenship by descent division, that people are asking these questions more and more. So it's good to get that clarification. So thank you. Another question here. In terms of assessing someone's eligibility under due diligence, if they had a minor criminal matter, such as driving under the influence from, anywhere between 5 to 15 years, would that automatically make them ineligible, or do you have some consideration for, a one-time offender in a matter that's maybe not as I don't want to say serious, but is maybe not as significant as larger types of criminality?
Okay, to answer that question, the legislation allows for persons who may have been convicted to be able to be eligible. Once that conviction is less than 12 months, or even if it is more than 12 months, then there are provisions under the Rehabilitation Act, which will require an assessment by a lawyer to determine whether that person would have been deemed rehabilitated under the laws of Antigua and Barbuda and therefore be eligible to apply. So driving under the influence and minor misdemeanors will not negate someone's eligibility for the program.
Okay, that's fine.
Just to clarify, when you said under 12 months, you mean a conviction for under 12 months of incarceration?
Yes.
So
12 months in prison.
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's clear. And as you know, I mean, if we do have someone with that type of background, you're great in terms of, we can sometimes say, do you think this is worth considering or not? You can usually give us a good sense just when we have a general overview. And I think that amount of interaction is so beneficial as to not sort of waste anybody's time, and most importantly, the applicant, to know if it's feasible or not. But everybody understands everything is assessed on the basis of an individual application and the unique circumstances that go with it. Can you talk about restricted nationalities? We have questions in particular about Libyans and Somalians, but the list that you currently have on the website does talk to other nationalities, and the fact that if they can, demonstrate no ties to that country of nationality, et cetera, et cetera. Can you give a quick overview how you assess people from the restricted countries and the 10-year rule that you apply?
Okay, sure. The restricted countries list comes in two parts, though. So there are those like Afghanistan, Somalia, and so on, where if the person was born in that territory, that they would have had to demonstrate that they've lived outside of the territory for at least 10 years and have no economic ties at all to that territory. In the case of Russia and Belarus, though, there's not that qualifying feature. So if you're from Russia or you're from Belarus, at this time, you're not able to apply, regardless of if you've lived outside of Russia or Belarus for 10 years. So even though we have Afghanistan as a restricted country, We have processed applications from Afghans who have been living outside of Afghanistan for at least 10 years, can show that they have legal residency in another territory and that they have no economic ties at all to Afghanistan.
Yeah, and the requirements are very clear on the website as well in terms of, how you would assess these people and the criteria they would have to meet. Because, we see it before. People, move from one of these countries as a minor child and they've grown up in another jurisdiction all their life, but they still have the birth certificate, from that country. And as we know, the birth certificate's a baseline document, for your application. So those are, I think it's important to understand again the flexibility that you apply. That is not, apart from the Russia-Belarus situation, it's not a hard and fast no. For the other nationalities on the list, it is done very much on a case by case, and that's something that's always good to see. That you're able to look at people as individuals, not purely as the country of their birth. So, thank you for that. There's a couple of questions here just for clarification on adult children and spouses. So, in terms of adding them as a dependent, can you give a very quick overview, just for the benefit of the audience, that if you have, let's say, main applicant and children, how you assess the dependency of the children, and then also for siblings and who could be included on the application?
Okay. As it relates to including children as dependents, you can include your child up to age 30. There's no longer a requirement to show that he or she is enrolled in an accredited institution of learning. However, we need to be able to see that the child is financially dependent on the main applicant. There are some cases where the dependent child is working, but when you look at their lifestyle and look at their income, you will realize that there is still dependency on the main applicant, and that child is eligible to be included. As it relates to the spouses of those dependent children, again, there's no requirement for the spouse to show that he or she is attending an accredited institution of learning. And interestingly enough, you can add that spouse as long as the dependent child is age 35 or less, but that spouse would need to be 30. I know it sounds a little tricky, but of course, we've had the debate that these days, children are not getting married until their early 30s because they're focused on different types of study, especially those who are into medicine. It takes a while for them to complete their studies, and so then they're generally not ready to get married until they're 31, 32. So most recently in the changes to the legislation, we extended that time frame to 35 for determining the eligibility of the dependent child's spouse.
The idea is to allow a 30-year-old who gets married at 32 to add his spouse at that point in time, or her spouse.
Yeah, no, that's fine, and just we're just winding down here for time, so I want to wrap things up. Just to, of course, thank Ms. Charmaine Donovan, CEO of the Citizenship by Investment Unit in Antigua and Barbuda, and Ambassador Jeffrey Hadeed, the chair of the Citizenship by Investment Unit or Commission. And so I do appreciate your time. I know you're both very busy people, and I think there's a lot of value in getting some explanations to people who are considering Antigua and Barbuda as a destination for citizenship and obviously contributing to the island. Here at Latitude, we're very proud to be an international marketing agent and partner with the program, which we've been involved in since its inception. And we're big fans of the program, as you both know. As a final note for the audience, if you have any further questions, you can email at info@latitudeworld.com, and our team will be able to answer any follow-up questions. There will be a recording of this available. Happy to say we're just under 250 people registered for the event today, so it certainly shows there's serious interest in Antigua and Barbuda as a destination. And I'm, as a practitioner, I reinforce what you both said about the steadiness of the program, and I think that's key, is people need to know that, if they put it in, they know it's in safe hands and that it's going to be predictable what comes out of the other end. And I'm excited for the digital platform to see how that comes out, and also looking forward to seeing you both in Antigua for the Caribbean Investment Summit in April. And I'm sure you'll have a lot of interest as well as people continue to their interest in exploring Antigua and Barbuda as a destination. So on that note, I'll say thank you to you both, and we'll keep in touch, and we'll let you know if there's any more feedback or questions from our audience today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks to you both. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.